Again, don't know a lot of the faces here, but I would be willing to assume most agency owners and freelancers, their core strength is the actual service offering that they're delivering. So I typically recommend your first hire should be fulfillment related. So helping you get out of the day to day of fulfilling with clients rather than it being a hire that's going to expand something that you're not doing. Um, another big benefit of that too is it makes the process of implementing what Ali said much easier. You likely already have your processes built out, but they're probably just in your head. You need to now document these processes, create your training materials, and then get it implemented into systems. So now when you have a new hire, they could go in, they have a clear understanding of what the expectation is, how to do the process, and then you have an accountability system where it's like, okay, I need these actions to occur at XYZ frequency. And you have examples of the level of quality that you expect. Um, that's why I recommend going in that direction first. It's going to be the easiest and it's going to be the most impactful if you're starting out. Just because, again, if you're the owner, you're going to end up wearing hats that are tougher to delegate out. Things like admin, HR, finance are going to still fall on your plate as you're growing. That's why fulfillment is what you need to get out of first. Um, that's what I usually recommend to any like starting brand. But then it also ties into like my recommendation for how you grow. I would split it up between growing by headcount or growing by service offerings. I do prefer growing vertically. So that's what I would consider headcount. Going very deep in your core offering. We definitely know that there's a lot of value being very specialized and very, very good at one specific deliverable or service offering. That's going to allow you to really go very deep into those processes, make sure it's practically world class, and then it's just easier to sell, hire, and deliver for brands. So I recommend doing that. The other component why is because the complexity of maintaining and building systems expands as you launch more services. It really starts to click for people when I word it this way. So it's pretty interesting where it's like every service offering that you launch is as if you launched another business. And it really needs to be treated that way because all of the steps that Ali outlined, you need to now go back and do that full process again for every single new service offering. And now these service offerings are going to be less and less in your core competence. So you're going to be relying on other people to do these. And as we all know, hiring is incredibly difficult. Um, as your agency scales, it becomes more of an operations and people game than sales and the actual fulfillment of the core service. Um, so those are some of the things why those are some of the core reasons why I recommend like you want to go very, very deep in one area before you get shiny object syndrome on, hey, look at AI, we could do this. Oh, somebody launched a creative strategy course. You know what? Let's start doing our own department there. It gets very difficult. And then to make matters worse, not only do you have to redo the processes for that department, now the complexity of them gets worse because not you might have two services. Let's say you have paid acquisition and email and SMS, but now you need to actually have three processes. You need to have if you sign up for paid acquisition, B if you sign up for just email, or now C if you sign up for both. Your processes get more and more complex the more it grows. This tends to start creating a lot of issues, especially in your automations. That's something that you're going to lose a lot of ability, especially if that's not one of your areas of expertise. So, it's very easy to create conditional logic branches in your forms or your Zaps, whatever tech software that you're using. But let's just say it gets very complicated as you go from, you know, one to two, and then it just exponentially gets more difficult once you go beyond that. Um, that's always again what I recommend if you're starting off. I wish I had like a set number that I would recommend, but you should get to the point where you kind of have a full pod structure before you move on. You should be at the point where you've successfully delegated out fulfillment of your core service offering without you. You're still going to be focused on, admin, HR, and finance, but the business can technically operate. If you go on a month-long vacation, it should be able to run there. That's also then once you should start getting into more org chart structure changes and building out levels of management. Right now, everybody would be more of like a senior or a lead in that role. And that goes into like another different topic when you get into hiring is your initial team is a lot of times not going to be the team that gets you to the next stages of where you need to go. And it's not, it isn't for, I would say it's more to do with specialization and what they're good at. That's not to say some of your original team can't go to the finish line. A lot of them can, but it just isn't the most. It isn't what you typically see. The core differentiation now is like, cool, you reached your full pod, and now you have the question of, do I start a new service or how do I start a second pod? Now is where having top talent that could do the things that we outlined before, which is build these processes for you, be able to manage and keep the team accountable, assist them through their problems. You're going to be stuck. A lot of them might be very good at actually delivering the skill, but being good at teaching and managing people is a different skill. And something that unique that I can share that we do at Homestead, I don't know of many others that do this, is typically we aim to get every department where it has actually two heads. The reason why is because one person is typically very, very technical, very, very good at the skill, but might lack organizational skills or people skills. And then you'll have somebody else that's more of a generalist that, understands it to a very solid level. They probably will not be able to manage your enterprise level accounts or like your most difficult challenges, but they are very good at keeping everything rolling smooth, working through problems, dealing with client fires, dealing with team issues. So when we look at a department, we're always trying to get it to that point where you get your first head, and then you kind of identify what do they like, what are they good at, what are they not, and then as you expand out, let's say you go from a pod of two, and now you're trying to go from 4 pods for that same service offering. Now you get to the point where you could split things out a little bit better, where you could delegate problems, um, and actually move away from a pod structure. So for us, one issue that happens, and your org structure, as I'm outlining, like change as you grow. It's constantly changing. A big reason why I like that, and we've seen it work over and over and over for our departments, is let's say we have now 4 pods, a leader on each, so they each oversee two. One client might have an issue that's more strategy or communication related and not in ad account, like technical details that the other manager would be overseeing. So now you get to the point where it's like your pod structures kind of break, where it's like, I have this problem, my manager can't necessarily solve this problem. Now, once you have like the two-headed monster at the top, now you can split up the roles and responsibilities of, if you have this problem, go here. If you have this problem, go here. And we've seen that work just extremely well. It's something that I typically recommend to like agencies that are now going into like, you're over a 10 head count. You have a relatively limited service offering still. I see that tends to work better. I know I've talked with different agency owners where they've tried to expand out to different services early on, and they end up kind of reverting still back to this. I'm not talking about you, but I've spoken to a lot that this is a recurring story. So that's why I'm really big into like, if your goal is to grow, build the strongest infrastructure that you have at your core and that foundation, because then it just makes it easier. Once it becomes time to expand your services, you're in such a better spot. I'll share a few reasons why. But let's say we've gotten to that point where now you're a team of probably like somewhere between 10 to 15. You have, a leader in place. You could be outside of the business in terms of fulfillment for the service. Um, it should be clear what service you should expand to by now because you've likely been sucked into it multiple times. The way that I described is like if it provides so much value to your core offering that you've been willing to do it for free, now is that's what you should start charging for. Um, the good thing as well too is like if you've already been having to kind of like jump in and help out here, it's a lot easier to now build out that department and you have your core set of clients where you're cross selling your existing clients. Um, so that helps you as a business as well. Anytime you grow, that impacts your margins. So if you're able to get them started not at ground zero, one, it helps your business a lot. Um, and then two, if it works well, the stickiness of like those clients overall is significantly better. I wish I had more specific data points to share with us, but we've seen an extremely strong correlation. Brands that leave typically are no longer fits in terms of criteria for us, or they're just on one service offering and they're lacking in other areas that we like. They kind of just refuse to sign up for it. They're like, I've got another agency, I'm going to do it in house, or I just don't want to pay for it. um, that limits things. So let's say for us, paid acquisition is very common. You'll have somebody that's like, yeah, I send 2 email campaigns a month. I set up my flows 7 months ago, never looked at it again. It's like, well, there's only so much we could really do if you've got big issues. So um, I recommend that. The other key piece here is keeping finances in mind. I know it's very difficult, but I recommend going for top talent here. You want to hire your top talent first rather than going cheap. It kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning of if now you need to delegate, the process creation, the management, the training, the fires that you have to jump into to somebody else, you need somebody that is damn good and capable of doing that. They're usually not cheap. You're going to feel the pain a little bit. But if you try to go cheap, like what you save in money, you're going to lose in time, and time is way more valuable. So I always recommend doing that. We did the same thing at Homestead where we did it from the top down. Like we hired the person that we want to lead the entire department in the future. They have to be willing to get their hands dirty, build out the processes, and then delegate down. That structure has worked extremely, extremely well for us. Um, we've already had it work perfectly for 2. Some of our other departments that are a little bit more established are already kind of transitioning to that point. And then we have those that are still pretty fresh where, you're getting somebody in and building those out.